Hi, I'm Arman, and today we will be making a simple website with a navigation bar, a header, subheaders, an unordered list, and an ordered list, and some cool animations. So before we begin, I would like to direct you to this really cool resource called W3 Schools that basically has everything about HTML on here. So if you want to add anything to your website, it's really easy to do, and just follow the instructions on here. So without any further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is download Adobe Dreamweaver from the Adobe CC Suite. And once you open it up, you'll get something like this, something that looks like this, or this exact page, and click Create New. Choose HTML and HTML5, that's the most recent iteration. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which means it's a high-level language, not a programming language, which basically means all the words are just in English. You can read them and it's not something like binary, something you can't read. So name your document. I'm going to name it All About Dogs. Okay, now the first thing you have to do is save this. So save it somewhere you want to save it, and make sure you name it index. That's the first page the server will search for when it presents your website, so you must name it index. Save. The next thing you want to do is open up and create a CSS file. That's a cascading style sheet file, and it basically just makes your HTML page look pretty. It's the structure, the fonts, the colors, the designs. Create and save that too. I'm just overwriting old files, but yeah, okay. So let's go over the structure of the HTML page first, and then we'll start working on it. So the first thing is a head tag, and within this is all the metadata. That's all the data about the page, and that's what the search engine like Google will look through when it's trying to index those pages and present them to the client whenever they're searching for it. Or the stuff that shows up like this title, that's what will show up on the top of your browser tab. So I'm going to first name this All About Dogs. Okay. The first meta tag you'll see is char set. That's character set, and it'll automatically be UTF-8. That is Unicode Transformation Format 8-bit. Unicode is Universal Coded Character Set, and it basically just declares all the characters and symbols that you'll be using, the letters and the symbols, that sort of thing. Next thing I want to do is, before I declare the title, I want to declare the width of the page, the size, and the way it shows up on devices. So if I'm looking at it on a phone, it doesn't look like it's on a laptop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare another meta tag. This one will be called viewport. And the content is the width of the page, and I want to make it equal to the device width. That means the width of the device that you're on, and the initial scale of the page will be 1. And there, I close the tag. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to link my new CSS document to the HTML page. So they're in the same folder, but they don't know that they're linked. So I'm going to start with writing link href equals, now there are only 2 in the folder, so it's going to suggest them to me. I want to link styles, so I'm going to click styles, then rel, and then I just want to tell it that it's a style sheet, then type, and then it's text or CSS, then close the tag. That's done. Okay, so the last thing I want to do before moving on to the body is, there's this font called Montserrat that I really like, but most people don't have it on their laptop installed. But I still want it to show up and be visible on the web page. So one thing I can do is use an API, which is an application programming interface. And this one's from Google, and it'll basically just load whenever the page loads. So you can go to font.google.com and just copy and paste for any font. This one's Montserrat, so I'm just going to paste it in, and that's it. It'll load every time you click on the site. Okay, so we're finished with the head. We've declared all our metadata. Next thing we want to do is actually start on the content of the page. First thing I want to do is create this really nice navigation bar, and you can see that it changes color every time you hover over it, so that's part of the design aspect. I'm going to actually just create something called an unordered list. An unordered list is basically a list with bullet points and not numbers. So first I'm going to declare nav for navigation bar. So it's not a proper list, it's a navigation bar list. UL for unordered list, and ordered list will be OL, and we're going to get to that soon. And then for every list item, you click LI. So ahref. And the first button, this one, links to the main page index. So I'm just going to put an index, and I'm going to put class equals active. This is just basically that this is the active web page, which means it'll stay red even when I'm not hovering on top of it. I'm going to declare what active actually means later on because it doesn't know yet. So I'm going to do home. And now if we actually have a look at what we have right now, that's all we have right now. We have an unordered list and it says home. So that's what we have so far. Okay, so let's add a few more items like all the buttons we have here. I'm going to do the same thing. li ahref. And because I don't have any page for this, I'm just going to put hashtag, and it knows that I don't actually have anything to do with this. And the next one is adopting. And then I can just basically copy this. And the next one would be rescuing, because you should rescue and not buy. Grooming. And the final one I'm going to put loving. Okay, so what we have so far, this is what I have so far. It's just an unordered list with all the items of the navigation bar. What I'm going to do is make him look pretty later. I'm just going to first add all the content of the page and then work on the CSS. So let's go back to the Dreamweaver file. What I'm going to do first is actually create the big title. So this big title, I'm going to do that first. So what I'm first going to do is create a div tag, which is a division tag, which basically just groups chunks of code together, and then you can style them separately in styles. So you can see how this is quite large, it has a blue background, that sort of stuff. It's different to this, so I'm going to group it in its own div tag. So how do you declare a div tag? First thing you do is a bracket, div, class. There are two things you could put here. You could put class or ID. ID can only be used once in the entire HTML file, and class you can use multiple times. So why not? Let's just use class. I'm going to declare it, name it whatever you want. So I'm going to name it title because it's the big title. When I put the bracket, it automatically puts a closing bracket. So this is a div title. Doesn't know what to do with it yet. It's just there. So I'm going to put a big header. This is called H1. The biggest header is H1, and I'm going to put all about dogs. And I'm going to style this H1 later. Right now it's just a big bit of text, and you'll see what it looks like later. And also I'm just going to put a line break below this, and the way you do that is just put BR. That's just break. So you save this, make sure it's saved, otherwise the little asterisk shows up on the top like that. Save it. And if you refresh, this is what it comes up as. So it's a large bit of text, and it's an H1. It says all about dogs, and below this there is a line break. You just can't see it because there's nothing under it. So let's go back. Now what I'm going to do is, this is the title. I want to go to the body. So I'm going to, basically I can just copy paste this. Reuse that. So div class, this one's body. It still doesn't know what to do with it yet. It's just a body. It doesn't know what body is. First thing I'm going to do is put another line break because I just want to keep them separate for now, and we'll see what they look like later. Okay, so the first thing we do, I want to put a subheading, and this is the second biggest. This is H2, and let's talk about breeds, different breeds of dogs. So I want to put a little line of text describing what breeds are, and the way I can do that is use a paragraph tag or P tag. When I put that in, it's a small bit of text, and I can say there are many different types or breeds of dogs, such as, then put a semicolon. Now I want to put an unordered list. We've already done that up here, and we can just do that again. So unordered list, and then list item, and what are the breeds? There's a Shih Tzu. We can put Pomeranian, and let's put Golden Retriever. Okay, so now if I save this, and if I have a look at what I have now, there's a breed of dog, and there's a text that's a P text, and we have an unordered list. You can see now it's sort of looking like what we have here. Now let's do that again. I'm just going to put a little bit more text, more information in. It's just the same format. And you can see I put it in here. let's just indent this the same, and it's basically the same format, but this one is an ordered list, meaning you get numbers and not bullet points. It's the same thing. So how to play fetch, I save this, and if I refresh it, you get this. Okay, so now we're good with all our content. This basically looks the same as this in terms of content. Let's make it look nice now. So what I'm going to do is go to the styles. First thing is this navigation bar. This navigation bar is actually quite difficult to style, so I'm just going to share the file for the CSS and you can just copy and paste. I'm going to do that too because it's quite a long bit of design, so I'm just going to copy. You can see how long it is, but if I save this now, you can see the difference it makes. It makes it look really pretty. The same content, just styled differently. Okay, now let's style the text of the page. So the first thing I want to do is style the h1 tag. So h1 and put a curly bracket, and I complete the curly bracket for you. I'm going to choose the font family. Well, I just downloaded, or I loaded onto the HTML page Montserrat. So Montserrat. And because I use an API, anyone who views the page will be able to see this h1 in Montserrat. Let's say you have like an iPad with a Safari browser, and Safari is not really well known for adhering to HTML rules and standards. What should I do? Well, I know that iPhones and iPads use Helvetica, so I'll just put Helvetica in. And the last thing for good practice, if all else fails, we know that all devices have a sans serif and a serif font built in. Serif is the ones with the flicky ends, like Times New Roman, and sans means no, so no serif means no flicks. So I'm going to just put sans serif. This just means if everything fails, choose your default sans serif font. If I can save this, you can see how this changes to All About Dogs. You can see it's the same font here. Now you can see the color of the text in the example website is actually white, so let's just do that color, and you must spell it in the American spelling, and you can choose RGB, you can choose hex, or you can literally just type in the colors you want. So this is white, it's pure white, so I don't really need to bother putting in the hex or RGB. I can literally just type white, save it, and you'll see it's disappeared, but it's still there, it's in white. Next thing is font size. Now I could either choose to do it in pixels like I've done it here, but the problem with that is that pixels show up differently on devices depending on their pixel density. So it's good practice for text and padding, that sort of thing, to use M. 1M is the default font size, and I'm just going to make it really big. I'm going to put 3M. Okay. And I want to make it align in the center, so text, align, and choose center. One more thing I want to do is that if you look here in the example one, when you refresh it, you get this really nice sliding animation, and you can do that quite easily on CSS. So animation name, I'm just going to call it H1. You can call it whatever you want. The duration of the animation, I'm going to put 2 seconds. You can choose however you want. And animation iteration count is the number of times the animation plays. So 1 is good because if I did it infinite, it would be quite annoying. So now I vote that the animation name is H1, but it doesn't actually know what H1 is. I'm going to put at keyframes H1. Keyframes are basically just the frames that you define, and then it fills in the gaps between. So I'm going to define what the keyframe is at 0% of the animation, and then what it is at 100% of the animation, and it'll fill in the gaps. So curly brackets, and at 0%, well, the margin at the left is 20%, and the opacity, that's 0% because it's not visible. And at 100%, the margin at the left is 0%, and the opacity is 100%. Okay, so now you actually get an animation like that. So you can see in the start it's invisible, which means the opacity is 0, and also it's on the right, meaning the left margin is a little bit big. And then when it finishes the animation, it gets to 0 margin, meaning it's right in the center, and 100% opacity, which means it's pure white. Okay, so now what I can do is I can define the design for the other elements of the page, but that's quite a long and tedious process. So you can just copy and paste it from the sample file. And this is what I came up with. You can see that the font family is the same. I chose bold. There you can also do bolder if you would like. We'll leave it as that. Color. This one's in hex. You can also put in RGB in this format. You can see the color shows up when you hover over it. And the same thing here. This is the paragraph tag, the ordered list tag, and the unordered list tag. All I wanted to do is just make it not a normal sans serif font. Same thing for body. We had defined this class before. Now we're telling what to do with it. The body, you put dot for class and hashtag for ID. Here it's a class, so I put dot. Font family, padding left, padding right, same as above. So if I save this now, and then I refresh my work here, you get this. And you also have the header invisible. Now I want to put a blue background behind it so I can actually see the thing. So what I'm going to do is dot, and it was title. Body's already been defined. Background color. And I'm just going to do the same color as this. And if I refresh here, that's what you have. Now you can see how the design's gone a little bit weird, and that's quite simple to fix. You can just go back here, go to the tag, and just add a line break, which is BR. Save that. There you go. So now there's an equivalent amount of space on both sides. And there you have it. That's how you make a basic HTML page with basic CSS. You've learned to create a navigation bar with links to different pages should you want them, an animated header, subheadings, an unordered list, and an ordered list.